Hi, so many ask the question, what's the difference between mainline economics and mainstream economics? I like to think of it in terms of that Pete Becky has suggested at mainline economics explains, and I quote, "It's a set of positive propositions about social order that were held in common from Adam Smith onward. But mainstream economics is a sociological concept related to what is currently fashionable among the scientific elite of the profession." Becky suggests to us that the big difference between mainline economics and mainstream is our approach to economics and whether or not economics needs to be broader than the narrow confines that the economic profession and economic elite would suggest it should be. And Adam Smith believed you needed to understand the politics, the incentives, the way individuals interacted with each other. And today, many scholars have picked this up. He kind of anticipated some of the things that have become popular in the economics profession, whether it's behavioral economics, institutional economics, some of the areas focusing on Austrian economics and public choice theory, etc., that Adam Smith seemed to suggest before these fields came out how critical they would be in our full understanding. And mainline economics tries to take us back to the place where we can use these kinds of broad concepts to enrich our understanding of how people could work together. So how do we do that? Well, as I said earlier, we need institutions, and we need to understand how those institutions operate. We do not operate in markets without some sense of how property rights might impact our willingness to exchange at any given point, on who has the right to exchange because they own that property, on what happens if we have a conflict between us. Is there a way of resolving that conflict so that we can both be happy enough to move forward and to exchange again? And so in mainline economics in the modern era, using the work of Austrian economics, of public choice theory, and of the Bloomington School and the work of Eleanor and Vincent Ostrom, we start to tease out the different institutional arrangements that might allow us to maximize our effectiveness in this market. And what are the political arrangements that are best suited to that? And what are the philosophical underpinnings of those exchange relationships? That's what we focus on in mainline economics. And we saw this. F.A. Hayek, for example, started his work with a recognition of the difficulty of collectivist planners trying to understand what was in the interest of all economics and all individuals. How does a single socialist planner know how much of one product or another, where to put resources in the market, what the price should be for those resources and for the finished products, and how to assign people to different positions relative to labor? The free market can introduce ideas and introduce exchanges and answer those kinds of dilemmas daily, infinite number of times, millions and millions of times every day. People will enter into arrangements of exchange without anyone having to make a plan, carry it out, have a law in place, etc. And F.A. Hayek wanted to understand how that could occur and how it would differ from the collectivist arrangements that he observed in Europe in the 1930s and into the 1940s. One of his most important contributions was on the role of information in society and how knowledge was dispersed through economic exchange. So by my purchasing something in the market, I'm sending a signal of how much I value it. Now, I may value it more than I actually have to pay, but as prices fluctuate, we will see how my behavior changes as well. And that will tell us a great deal about information and exchange that no individual sitting in a bureaucratic office in Washington, D.C., or in Guatemala City can possibly understand for us. So that was his major economics contribution. It was in the challenges associated with the socialist calculation and the sheer scope and volume of information that would be needed to try to do this successfully. Even if society wants to do it through a socialist approach, he found you couldn't do it that way because you couldn't possibly know what people valued sufficiently, and there would always be these disconnects, this waste that took place in the system. And so that shifted him to his work on constitutional theory and on free society. So one of his most popular books, well-known books, is The Road to Serfdom, where he challenges this socialist state from a political perspective and worried about the worst getting on top. Out of that, we see him move forward to try and understand, well, what kind of a constitution could be put in place that would try to resolve the dilemma of sufficient information, that would allow people to operate freely and let that information be dispersed and decentralized. What kind of political arrangements would be required to maintain that freedom in the marketplace? And he knew this would be a huge challenge. He came through World War II and saw the abuses of Hitler and totalitarian states, and saw the beginning of the Soviet state and its exercise of control over economic calculations. And so he understood from his own experience how this would work. So Hayek spent the rest of his career trying to work out what type of a political constitution and economic constitutions could possibly deliver the kind of dispersion of information and freedom necessary to create the kind of human flourishing he thought was possible in the marketplace. He was recognized in economics largely for the use of knowledge and the information dispersion issues, but in fact, in the broader mainline tradition, his work on constitutional theory fits every bit as well. We'll pick up next time in other episodes with others that have contributed in the modern era to mainline economics and follow the tradition of Smith. In particular, Jim Buchanan and his work on public choice, and Eleanor Ostrom and the Bloomington School. Thank you.